So, hi, this is Courtney from TechRaptor, and I'm here with...
Joe Neat, executive producer.
Shelley Preston, senior designer.
Mike Chapman, design director.
From Sea of Thieves. So, you guys just got done with an awesome panel. So my first question is, tell us about the book that's coming out, the one that we got the little flyer for.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like, well, you've been most involved in it, right?
I've been. Well, it's, I think, where can I start with the book? It's, whenever we kind of design mechanics for the game, and locations and islands and how we name them, I think this is a thing that maybe a technical alpha players haven't really appreciated yet, but we do a lot of work on the kind of lore of the game. Like, what is the reason to have this thing in the world? What is the kind of character's backstory? And that's going to feed quite tightly into our progression system, where we're kind of working on the design of these different play styles, but kind of why are players doing what they're doing in the world? Why is the world the way it is? So we've always kind of thought about the lore of the game, but as we kind of built out this vision for the lore, we have this opportunity to kind of, well, let's get it into the hands of people, right? So we've kind of got this Tales from Sea of Thieves book, which kind of delves into kind of the history of the Sea of Thieves and the stories that have gone on there.
Which includes some player stories, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
it's a really cool thing. So with it, obviously we've got players in a technical alpha playing the game, and they're almost like our first pirate legends, as it were. They've been the first people to explore the Sea of Thieves. So we've actually immortalised some of their stories from our forums and actually put them into this book. So players have kind of created the lore of the world, as it were, as well, which is really cool, really exciting.
Cool. And is the book going to come out before the game, at the same time as the game?
I think TBD, I think, on the date. I think our partners will be announcing exactly when they want that to come out, I think. But yeah, it will be around the kind of launch of the game, I think. This is just a bit of a tease and a bit to kind of get people excited about it and stuff. So, yeah. Okay.
And now, you guys were talking a lot about, cutting down the toxicity that a lot of multiplayer games have kind of been famous for, or infamous for. What sparked that? Who was the one who was like, you know what, I don't like the toxicity, we should do something new?
I think it's something that we all really strongly believe in. I mean, when we first started developing Sea of Thieves, and we wanted to kind of bring crews together, bond crews together, and just have a really fun, light-hearted. It's always just been light-hearted, silly, a little bit fun. And as soon as the game began to grow in that way, it was just felt natural that, toxicity and that kind of thing just doesn't have a place in Sea of Thieves. It jars so much with the experience we're trying to create that kind of none of us wanted that.
Yeah, and we looked at shared world games, didn't we? Like right at the start of this, we were looking, and what was amazing about them was the stories you'd see, whether it was DayZ or it was EVE Online, very different experiences, but the player created stories in those were incredible. But we wanted to take that barrier to entry out of the way, right, and create an experience that was accessible and that was fun and that was welcoming, and it all kind of just came from there, didn't it? And to do that, you need to create an experience that stops people basically being a bit shit to each other, right? And but genuinely early on, when we were prototyping, you could steal the treasure off each other, couldn't you? Yeah. And you could hurt each other in a crew. And I remember that conversation, having it going, we need to turn off the ability to hurt each other.
Because initially we just wanted it to be so free, and we kind of hoped that crews wouldn't betray each other, but just. It's almost like you need to build it into the language of the game design. If it's in there, players will kind of almost expect that that's what is expected of them. If I can kill someone on my crew, then the game's kind of telling me that that's okay and that's acceptable behaviour. So we needed to build it into the language of the game so you can't do it, so you know it's unacceptable right from the outset. Yeah,
and we've always believed that if you put the right kind of guidelines or rules in place, that players will behave in a positive way, right? And so all of the design thinking that you guys have put into the game from the start has been about that, right? And it just felt wrong, couldn't it? You'd play for an hour, an hour and a half, you'd really form a bond, and then someone would screw you over and they'd steal all your stuff, and you were just like, that's not the experience that we want to create.
The fact that the game would play the same each time, although that sounds really fun on the surface, it meant that no one could resist. There'd always be someone in the crew, and you'd just be waiting for, here we go, here's the moment, someone's going to betray the crew again. It just meant that we were getting the thing we never wanted, which is a game that played the same each time, because you would always expect it. Whereas it kind of relates to what we said at the panel. Us having a diverse community, us Sea of Thieves appealing to that broader sense of players who want to come into this game and follow their own motivations, and the game playing differently each time. That's really Sea of Thieves at its best. It's ensuring that, you know, your encounter with the other players, how you cooperate together, like, it works best when you've got a whole range of different players that want to do different things in the world rather than just having one kind of player. And that just means that we had to make it as welcoming as possible and give players the tools that they need to be able to deal with, like, troublemakers.
Yeah. And I think, like, we talk a lot, we use the word opportunity a lot, and I get mocked for it in the team, but
Friendly mocking.
Yeah, but genuinely, I think we all believe that there's an opportunity to create a multiplayer game that isn't toxic and isn't and just create something new. And like we see, like when, you know, some people will always kind of see the problems or the challenges, whereas we always see the opportunity. Like, how can we do something different? How can we actually create a different experience? And like that sparks our kind of almost like competitive kind of designer and kind of game developer kind of, like, I don't know,
it's an exciting challenge to take on. It really is. And it's not an easy challenge. Like, we don't want to make a game that's like any other game out there. We want to like break down those barriers and create this experience that no one has ever had before. That's what we kind of get up for in the morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if we manage to nail it, like it could be
start
just
a whole new
genre, right.
Because I mean, I was going to say, you know, there's nothing out there really like that. That's not like, you know, a censored, you know, G version little kids game. Like they have those multiplayers, but there's nothing really for, you know, not even all ages, but like, you know, teens to adults that, you know, isn't toxic, but isn't, you know.
It's a serious game, right? With a serious game design behind it, and like, it's like, I think it's like, you can almost be kind of, I don't know, like a little bit deceptive in terms of like the art style and the visual stuff, but when you actually get on that boat and you figure out, oh, it handles like a real boat, and you've got to figure out how to do it all and all that kind of stuff, like there's real depth to the experience. You know, we're serious game designers, serious game makers, right? We're making the game that we want to play, right? So it's yeah.
Now, I don't personally know what other games you guys have worked on, but I mean, you know, obviously you guys have worked on other games. How did those experiences influence, you know, the design and the layout and the play style and everything going in to Sea of Thieves?
That is a great question. For me, I think that's the thing you don't want to do. You don't want the decisions you make to be clouded by what you've done before. I think, like, this game, more than any, it's about taking a fresh look at things, approaching mechanics from the ground up with that vision for Sea of Thieves in mind, not kind of going, well, on game X we did this, on game Y. I mean, that's not the way to go create a new experience. So we've like deliberately not referenced other games, not referenced other games we've worked on, and really gone, like, with all of our experience, how can we approach this fresh and build it from the ground up and build something different?
And even how we're bringing it to market, right? In terms of like doing the Insider program, and like we've never done anything like this before.
None of us on the team ever done that before. It's brand new to us. Like, we're learning alongside our players. Right?
Yeah, but we identified that as part of the strategy, like to bring this type of game, which is all about how, like, so dependent on players playing together and how they use the mechanics, that we needed to kind of almost adopt this early access mentality, right? Of like, but without the kind of actually doing early access, and like, because we're a first party studio, we're Xbox, you know, like, and most first party games are like, they're trying to generate revenue to finish. Like, we don't really have that excuse, right? We've got Xbox kind of funding us, but we still adopted the same tactics and the same mentality with our Insider program. That's basically our version of early access, because you need to test your assumptions with real players, because we'd be in the studio kind of almost role-playing like the right way to play, and going, are people going to play like this? Like, are people, like, if they encounter other ships in the world, are there going to be moments when they don't battle and when they do bond and they chat and like they have that parlay moment and stuff? And I've experienced it in our alpha with real players where they do it, and I'm just like, whoa. Like, and so, like, but that's why we've adopted that thing. But like, we just looked at what was the right way to create this type of game and bring this type of game to market. So, like, yeah, it's not about what you've done in the past. I think it's about, like, looking at the experience we're trying to create and going about it in the right way. So, you know, like, because we've worked on tons of different games, right, like all over the place, and but yeah, I think that's what's been so refreshing about this game, and also I think why we're so passionate about it, right, is that we get to, like, we're breaking new ground, we're doing new things like every day, and that as creative kind of people, that's the most exciting thing possible, right?
My next question, I guess it would be for you, Shelley. So just from the teasers and everything that we've seen of the game, it seems to be a lot of the Caribbean pirate kind of influence, like the stereotypical Treasure Island pirate sort of thing. But I mean, historically, there were pirates in other parts of the world, and there were a lot of different cultures of that. Are we going to be seeing any of that in the game at some point?
So there are actually distinct areas in Sea of Thieves that do kind of look and feel different as you sail through them. So there is that blue sky kind of Pirates of the Caribbean. There's also the wilds area that's a lot more kind of barren and dark. And then we have our, I'm lost for words, our...
the Ancient Isles.
The Ancient Isles, which is where a lot of our lore is in there as well, where there's kind of ancient artifacts and lost civilizations. So we do definitely have that in Sea of Thieves. It's not just all that one tone.
But it's also not a historical recreation of 17th century.
Well,
It's our own world, right? It's our own kind of place that we've created.
It's fantasy. It's fantasy pirates, in a believable but fantastical world.
Yeah. The idea of, we mentioned it in the panel, but people coming to Sea of Thieves with that pre-made knowledge of, they've read Treasure Island, they've watched Pirates of the Caribbean, living up to that pirate fantasy, that feels like the right thing to do, so players can come into the world and kind of know what to expect, I look at that pirate, I look at the way he's dressed and kind of know, well, he's accomplished a lot. I think it's about kind of tapping into what players already know, but then having that foundation to then go wild with the mechanics. So bring them in, meet them halfway, and then push the mechanics in a new direction, which is, I think we've done.
Okay, and now, speaking of that, my question just flew out of my head. So you guys talked about Pirates of the Caribbean, Monkey Island, Goonies, and Treasure Island as your influences. Were there any other pirate games that you guys maybe checked out that you thought were influential?
Honestly, it's genuinely about that foundational, whatever pirate adventure means to you, in your heart straight away. So for me, that's the Goonies. I know you love Monkey Island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe yours is Treasure Island.
No, the Goonies. I'm the Goonies.
Okay.
I'm all about it. We hired out a cinema, and took the team to watch the Goonies early on in the project. Yeah.
But kind of, that's what's cool about Sea of Thieves is that idea that you've got in your mind of what a pirate adventure is, what the romance of going on a pirate adventure is to you. Everyone on the team can bring their version of that to Sea of Thieves and then create this kind of ultimate version of that pirate fantasy. So it was never about going and looking at other games and how they've done it. It was just about what's in your heart when you think about a pirate game.
Beautiful.
Okay, and then were there any, pirate tropes that you wanted to include but weren't able? Did you try, I don't know, putting parrots in, and after a while we're just, no, that didn't work? Was there anything?
Well, we're having a debate about smoking at the moment, aren't we? Whether we can get smoking pipes in and get it past the age rating board and keep our teen ratings. So, that's going to be an ongoing discussion. Whether we can have pirate vape or something pirate vapes, maybe that'll be okay.
We've actually got a long-standing joke on the team that whenever we have a new person on the team, it's well, where's the design document? Show me the design document. We've actually got I think it's called 1001 Pirate Ideas. It's this, just the book of all the pirate tropes of all the parrots and the monkeys and
aimed at 5 to 6 year olds.
It's like a kid's pirate book, and we're just read that and you'll know where we're going with this.
It was really funny because we got that book and when we were quite far in the prototype, and it was literally a checklist. Yeah. So I think pretty much everything that we've wanted to do has worked. We found a way to make it work. There's always a way to make it fit Sea of Thieves.
We do have a phrase that you coined for things that aren't quite right for Sea of Thieves, which is party bag.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So a child party bag at the end of a party, and it's got a version of Pirates on that looks like it's built for children. That's not what Sea of Thieves is. So it's cool. It's a cool version of Pirates, even though it's got this timeless art style. Yeah. So if anything strays too far in that territory, we just say it's a bit party bag, and we all know what each other means.
I think the important thing to stress as well, and this is right from the start of the game, is that if you think about that vision for the game of players being together in this immersive world, having a set of tools and then enough direction, and then all these kind of emergent encounters that can happen when these different crews of players meet, you could make that work without the wrapper of pirates. I don't think it doesn't kind of work that way around, where it's like, well, what's the next big pirate thing we need to go do? It's more as what game feature do we need to add to enrich the experience, and then it kind of works that way around. We then say, well, how do you then represent that and make it feel at home in a pirate world? So it's kind of, you kind of don't start with the pirate thing. You start with what's the right feature for the game, what's the right thing for players, and then you do that whole lore thing, pirate thing.
And we've taken time to make decisions on a lot of stuff, right? That, like, when it's like the balance of loss, or like what happens when you die and everything, and like the amount of time we spent trying to figure out. Like, I remember that big whiteboard Greg had with it. Yeah, like how do you make death fun? And part of the whole journey and part of everything else. And then it was like when someone like finally said "Go ship," it was just like, oh yeah. It's basically Beetlejuice waiting room, right? Sold. Yeah. But like it was, but we've done that on almost everything, haven't we? Like we've spent a lot of time
and
just
even
going.
Even like the mermaids, like so when you fall off your ship or you're like stranded, a mermaid will appear and they'll salvage your ship or take you back to your ship if it's still there. Like that kind of came about. We were toying for a long time with the mechanic of what do we do when players fall off the ship, because they can't just be waiting to die. Like that was the very worst thing. Like so we had this idea that you'd need to have a way of getting back to the ship, and then like you said, the idea comes first and then the pirate rapper comes afterwards. It's like that could be the mermaid, that could be how we get the mermaid in, so it kind of works that way around.
Okay, well since you guys have other stuff to do, I will let you go, even though I could ask 1,000,001 questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.